holding your body very still without being very strict or rigid. Just observe what continues to move in any of the sense fields, including the mind, without any particular comment. Just observe. Those of you in the Zendo, please gather in front of the altar, and if you're on Zoom, please turn toward your computer screen, and thank you. This is Wednesday evening, so we will have a Dharma talk. Dharma talk. You know, voice to text, if you just say Dharma talk, and you'll say Dharma talk. That doesn't work. Not what I'm going to do with Dharma talks. So you're all welcome. I'm happy to see you here. I'm glad that you're giving this situation the benefit of the doubt, even though you may have a lot of doubts. And they are totally included. I'm here to teach you the Dharma as I see it. I'm not here to present as a ideal human being. So because what I'm going to say is important, rather than just, I have a few notes here about what I intended to say, I'm actually going to read a little bit of this, and then I'll come off the top of my page. So the title this evening is When Opinion Replaces Perception. So you have a perception, and then you have an opinion about it. You judge it, you evaluate it. Then we judge, evaluate, and buy into prejudice if it were actually, as if it were actually true. When actually, it is not perception only. It is perception with a lamination of fear, the lamination of hope, the lamination of judgment, the lamination of the three poisons: passion, aggression, and ignorance. You're not seeing what's in front of you. If you see something in front of you, whatever it is, any situation across the living room, in your house, on your television, with your partner, children, parents, neighbors, whatever, if you come to any conclusion about that at all, I don't care how relatively accurate it is circular. You are buying into the primary illusion that most of the world is operating in, as if there are people here and someone else over there. If there's a right and a wrong, a life and a death, a night and a day. Go ahead. You can do that. You're free. And if you're well favored, you might consider what I'm endeavoring to communicate to you, something I've spent half a century looking at. And not just for my benefit, but for your benefit. I'm not here to sell you a bill of goods. You owe me nothing. It's not a transaction. If you think it's a transaction, then you will be evaluating what I'm doing and seeing if I'm doing what I should be doing. This does not mean that you will exclude the laminations because you see their laminations, but you'll see through them. You'll see they're still there, but they're just part of the illusion. Cover-ups to what is actually there. If you see what is actually there, you will see yourself. You will see yourself. It is like a mirror. This is what the function of the teacher is about, to function as a mirror. Since the rest of the world looks so real and dualistic, it's so convincing. It's so very convincing. Polarity, right, wrong. Your neighbors will agree and disagree in such a way that you can't let go of your grasp on right and wrong and should and shouldn't. They shouldn't, they shouldn't. We've even got lists of things that you should and shouldn't do all over the place. You can see what they're doing with people who want power. They just use those against you. That's why there's so many powerful people in charge of your life. This is what the function of the teacher is about, is to function as a mirror so that they can reflect back to you that which is obvious to you all over the world, all over your life, all over your neighborhood, but looks real. Whereas the teacher will do it in such a way that you see a reflection of what you're up to not comfortable. If you are looking for a transaction, you may see that as you may see it as being wrong. Teacher shouldn't be treating you that way, shouldn't be mean to you, shouldn't be bullying you. Well, I'm about to bully you. And I've been telling you since I met you, if you've been listening to me for 15 years, you'll see I have not changed my tune at all. I'm just saying it's a teaching, my friends, it's a teaching. It's not bullying you. I care deeply about everyone that's here in this room or everyone's on the screen. Even though some of you I've never met face to face and probably never will. But what I'm doing here is not to get control of you or get you to send me money or obey me or do anything. I want you to see your true nature. And if the way in which I do that causes you to run away or back up or judge me or think that the way I'm conducting my life is inappropriate, then you probably should be doing something else with your life and not listening to me. I'm only here if I've got one student. Let's see if I missed anything. Terrible memory. So you need to be a true and devoted student in order to actually receive what shows up from the teacher as a teaching, rather than some kind of criticism you need to fight with or think that they're unfair and they're being mean to you. Because it is painful to have someone look right at you, see you lying to yourself, point it out to you, and have you just react. I know I had a teacher point out to me what I was doing. It took me 10 years to realize what he was pointing at. By the time I was able to go to him, he passed away. I've told this story 15 or 20 times lately because it's so close to what's been happening in our organization and my teacher-student relationships. I have people that just believe somebody else's thoughts, and rather than talk to me about it to see what it's about, they just say, I'm done with you. If they even say that. So when the opinion, here's the perception, you see something, I don't care what it is. And if you come up with some kind of idea, judgment, opinion, evaluation, conclusion about that, I don't care how accurate it is. It's still replacing your actual perception of what this is. And what is it? What is it?
Not separate.
It's pure appearance. That's your Dharma name. Pure appearance. If you see what this is, it's completely pure. There's nothing but sacredness. It's heartbreaking to see people twist their minds and lives into some kind of wretched evil or wretched wrong or wretched, and totally cover up the complete sacredness and holiness of this very living being that you are. I'm not being romantic. The kind of sacredness I'm talking about is not some kind of wonderful golden feeling with light showering all over you, although it may. You have to see it. I'm here to help you see it. If you're interested, I'll continue to help you. But it is very difficult to continue with all the negativity that has been coming this way, generated by people who, well, don't need to say any more than that. That's enough. It's difficult. You want me to keep coming here? Do you? Shajian?
Yep. Please remain.
I mean it. I mean, I have to do this because this is getting more and more negative. The combination of the Sangha or the community and the students and my own physical health, which is I'm going to be 84 next month, in less than a month. That's the combination of the two is really, really difficult. I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me. I'm asking you to do the one thing I've been asking you to do is train your mind. Don't live another day in your life without seeing the truth yourself. Don't believe me. All I'm doing is saying, look there. I'm like someone telling you how to cultivate a field. There's the mules, or there's the tractor, or there's the cultivator. Go in a straight line. When you get to that other end, turn around, move over 4 feet and come in a straight line back. If you've ever cultivated, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's the total instruction. Look out for rocks. Just very simple. Cultivate your mind, train your mind by going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth through it. Is it difficult? It's very hard because you run into the rocks of your own karma. You run into big, huge boulders that should not be there. What do? You may have to go around them. You may have to stop, get out, move the rock aside and keep going, to use the old farming idea. There's something to that. It's a kind of cultivation, but it isn't just cleaning things up. It's actually about awareness, not getting rid of anything. If you see the rock, you might have to move it. In your mind, all you have to do is see the obstruction, because the obstruction is an illusion. The rock isn't an illusion. It's real in the context of dependent origination, which is relative truth. So it has a reality that's pretty damn solid. You can do this. If you have doubts about it, that's one of the most powerful things that can arise in awareness, is a doubt about this. In the Zen tradition, I think it's with the Sotor's Rinzai Zen, it's there's a teaching in there, and I can't remember the name of the teacher, about developing a great doubt, actually deliberately being full of doubt, because that doubt, that quality of just not knowing, is so powerful, because the not knowing is a negative part of the fundamental understanding, which is realization. So you're actually creating, by doubting, you're actually creating the space within which, or as which, the fundamental understanding could be seen, rather than going to some kind of idea of trying to figure out emptiness, or figure out shunyata, or figure out a dependent origination. You can't do any of that. Those are concepts about something that can't even be talked about more. Look like you had a question, no?
Yeah.
Anyone in here have a question?
Well, Dobali, it seems like what you're pointing at is to suspend belief in all of what looks so real.
You can say it that way. Seems so solid. This is solid. It's not about getting rid of that or suspending belief in that, but just do it in the mind stream. Do it. Whatever thought arises in your mind next is unreal. It's there. It's solid. It's chunky. It's crude, or it's abrasive, or it's textured, or has some kind of depth, or some kind of heat, or some kind of cold, has some kind of qualities to it. That's what makes it seem so real and convincing. So start there. Watch what happens in the mind without grasping, rejecting, or shutting down, without having any opinion on it at all. And you will see that this is what Trungpa Rinpoche is talking about when he says in the Sadhana Mahamudra that pain and pleasure have become ornaments, which it is pleasant to wear. What is the ornament? The actual receiving of that as it is. It's just receiving it as it is. Pain, pleasure, ornaments. What's the pleasant part of it? It's not pleasure. It's seeing that it's a fundamental seeing where you see you're no longer at war with pain. You're no longer grasping at pleasure. You're no longer concerned about the polarities, even though they come and go and still may be pleasurable or painful. And what is the pleasant to wear? That's as close that he comes to talking about the traditional Buddhist teaching of bliss. It's not a feeling. It's just a fundamental understanding where you realize that war is over. You're done. You're done for. There's no other mountain to climb. There never was a mountain. There never was. This is a concept of emptiness that is actually realized, or even the concept of shunyata, or emptiness, that vanishes also. And there's just complete clarity about what this is. This is possible for you. If you ask me, well, have I realized this? Sokuzan, so are you talking out of your experience? No. If I were talking about out of my experience, I'd be trying to convince you of something. And all I'm doing is encouraging you to look here. When I say here, I'm talking about look here. Do that by holding still in front of nothing, watching what moves until you see that nothing actually occurs. Chisho.
Tishavaying. Normally, when I feel bad about something, it is because I'm regretting having done something. Why do you feel sad?
Why do
You mentioned today that you feel terrible about so many people leaving or whatever.
I do.
Why do you feel sad? Why?
Same reason you do, causes and conditions. Same thing. What's different? What's different about it? You tell me.
Tishavaying, in my case, when I feel bad about something, it is because I'm regretting having done something which I shouldn't have done, for example. Bowing.
Okay, I can say it this way. I don't regret anything. If I regret something, that means it looks like I had some control over something. And I know I have no control over anything. And why do I not have any control over anything? There isn't anyone. You can actually experience your life. You can experience regret. You can experience pain. You can experience pleasure. You can experience canaries and you can experience wombats.
Tishavaying.
But the differentiation, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Tishavaying. But you specifically in the talk today ascribed it to people leaving.
Yes,
Why is that? I mean, that means there seems to be a cause and effect. Bowing.
there is a cause and effect. We're not getting rid of cause and effect. We're not getting rid of it. What is the difference? I asked you, what's the difference? There's no one there. It is an illusion. But that does not mean that the illusion isn't intense and that we don't have emotions about it. But we are not deluded by it. I'm not deluded by it into thinking that I should regret it. There's no one to regret anything. I can see that it's dependently arisen. It doesn't mean that it won't create suffering, that I won't see that people are going in circles. Going in circles and blaming me or blaming others or blaming and torturing themselves and going right back into the fire of samsara. Go ahead, continue to ask.
Tishavaying.
Yes,
So if there is no self there, how can there ever be blame towards that no self? Bowing.
actually, if you're blaming, you're establishing a self that is wrong. If you're regretting, you're establishing it. I'm saying, I'm not kind of letting myself off the hook. Oh, I'm not to blame for anything. I'm just saying that there's no solid being here that is creating the cause and effect. The cause and the effect is an illusion. It is unreal. If you think it's real, then there's going to be some praise and blame. I can continue to respond to questions about that if you have it.
Tishavaying. So that there is a cause and effect, meaning there are people leaving and you feel bad. That sounds very much like how I would feel if somebody left me, for example.
That's why I'm your teacher. Of course, I'm not any different than you. I'm not any different than anyone here. That's why I say, do not set up standards for me or for anyone. Please don't do that. Don't put the teacher, even though the Tibetans will put teachers on big pedestals, don't put me on a pedestal. This is the highest pedestal I'm going to get. And that just puts me in a position where I can even talk for an hour about the Dharma. But I'm not separate from you. I'm not different from you. I'm not better than you. But I'm looking at something that you may be missing. And that's what I'm teaching out of. I'm just saying, talk to you today about perception. And I'm here to respond to all of your questions. Maybe not very good, but I'll do the best I can. More.
Tishavaying. So if that's a situation, normally, again, I speak for myself, I would do amends. I will do something to make it different.
So you're
why wouldn't you follow me in that, Bhaving?
Why don't I follow you in that? Because you cannot manipulate this situation. It is an illusion. You cannot manipulate an illusion. The only thing you can do is see that it's unreal. The karma that brought you into India and into this human form and took you to Japan and brought you to meet this teacher, all the karma there is without a direct cause. It is dependently arisen. There's no singularity pushing you this way, and it just looks like it. An ego will make use of any cause and effect it can find in order to continue to substantiate, fuel itself and get nutrition so you continue to feel like a person who's right. Or for that matter, on the shame end of it, look like a person who's wrong, who can't get anything right. Yes,
Teacher Bowing, so I can intellectualize, I can understand my where I am on the path. I understand it. I can also understand what you are saying from a fruitional point of view. My question is about the interface between fruition and people on the path.
thank you.
But
There's no interface. An interface is something you're inventing to keep you from seeing it. Stop it.
Teacher Bowing, but that's a given. I am there, meaning.
Okay, then you're there. Then I respect that.
I'll let me think about it and come back if I have another question.
I will not stop you from thinking about it. If one thing I can get credit for, I don't stop anybody from thinking about anything. So go ahead, please, and thank you for your kindness and consideration. I appreciate it very much. Michelle, yes.
Underlying, I'm calling to mind the vividly unreal, yet there is still form.
Yes.
So in this particular example that Chisho's bringing up, you're saying that we're not seeing that it's unreal and trying to manipulate and you're
Yes.
seeing just form. So the perception is just the form.
That's correct. Question?
Junshi Bowing. If we are judging the teacher's relative actions, is that a place where we're unable to receive?
Probably, but that doesn't mean that the whole situation isn't very painful. It's just that the ego does not want to be exposed. And it will fight tooth and nail right up to the end. To not be exposed. I did it with Coben. It was painful, but I could not be revealed. I was not willing to be embarrassed or be wrong or to be exposed. It took another 10 years of sitting meditation for that to collapse. Well,
Junshi Bowing. Should we endeavor to let the teacher into all aspects of our life?
no, not necessarily. Each person has a different relationship with the teacher. In this case, if it's this person. Not necessarily. It's not a confessional. It's so different with each person. I have no strategy, no plan, no anything. If you bring which you meet with me a couple times a month. The last time we met for quite a long time. We talked quite a bit. Question about that or something in that area? Because I don't feel like you were holding anything back. I know I wasn't.
If we are separating our spiritual life and our mundane or relative life, is that, are we missing something? Is that a
There's
misunderstanding?
probably some difficulty in that area if you think that there are two different things there and have one and the other, although they have a tendency to separate on their own. Well, there's a time when you're facing the cushion and the other time when you're chopping vegetables and another time when you're working at your job, and there's lots of differentiation and separation going on. It's just part of the whole of all the different forms. I'm not sure if that's what you're asking about.
How you talk about not necessarily doing any sort of meditation and action. So if I'm not trying to force the spiritual life into my mundane life,
Yes.
in what way are they not separate already?
They are separated because of just the way we function. But understanding that they're not separate eventually it's just like you wake up to that. You realize that the boundary between meditation or training the mind and your everyday thought processes are not two different things. My way of teaching that is you don't have to stop thinking, you don't have to control anything. Just be aware of everything. Be aware of thoughts, aware of emotions, aware. That doesn't, if you're aware, that means you don't do something with the emotion or with the thought, like try to get rid of it. Or try to, as Chisho was asking about, you actually regret it. You actually see that things are happening exactly the way they need to. And there's no one who's correct. There's no one who's incorrect. The whole personhood and other self and other just comes apart. But that doesn't mean there isn't a lot of suffering there, especially with people who are believing their thoughts and are actually using their ideas and so on to hammer away at others. Get them to do this or that, or believe this or believe that. It's just painful. But that's not wrong. It's just part of samsara. It's part of the world of cause and effect, of believing in relative truth, materialism of various sorts. Well,
Until we see that they're not separate, will it look like my time is always split between spiritual path and mundane path?
good, yes. And it would look like there's some people are right and some people are wrong. Sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong. Just all that differentiation that goes around with all kinds of desire hanging around there, pushing and pulling and pushing and pulling. It's an illusion. It's unreal, but it's, as the Buddha said in the First Noble Truth, life is suffering. It's extremely painful. And that, as long as there's a living being here, that's not going away. The Third Noble Truth of cessation doesn't mean that the suffering will cease. I'm not saying there aren't teachers that teach that way. I do not. Because I'm teaching out of what I'm looking at, not what something I read in a book. All those Four Noble Truths, all the other teachings I run into, I look at them in the context of what's in front of me, what I see every day, every moment, rather than do I agree with that idea, that statement, or that opinion, or that set of circumstances.
Not right now, thank you.
Michelle Bowing, so kind of along the lines of what Junshu said. Is our spiritual life just as mundane as our relative life?
Yes, they're not separate. Everything is completely sacred everywhere. There's no other way to say it. There's no other way to see it. Even the worst, terrible, nasty occurrence is completely sacred. It could not happen without consciousness only. It's just that sometimes things operate out of grasping, rejecting. The three poisons are operating there and pushing and pulling and shutting down and creating chaos all over the world and possibly all over our kitchen. Difficulty. We see it on our own Sangha coming and going. You just keep going anyway. We keep training our minds. Keep working with this. Don't give up on each other. You give up on yourself. Very challenging for me. I want to, at my age, I just want to give up and stop everything. I have to be sincere with you there because it's painful in many ways.
Please remain.
Yes,
Wunderbar, is the illusion as sacred as the form?
yes.
Also,
Everything is sacred. Everything is completely perfect as it is, as the Dzogchen masters taught us. Longchenpa, the great perfection. There's nothing to fix, nothing to repair. It just looks like it. So we don't have to fix it by covering that up or getting rid of that issue or that problem. Just include it. If it's a nail in your shoe, then it's just there. If it's you turn around and run into a tree limb or something because you didn't see it was hanging low, It's just a part of being in the illusion and being particularly cloudy in that area.
Nathan
Nathan.
Bowing. If we have a painful emotion, say loneliness, we're laminating any kind of story on top of that, is that just a cover up to not really feel that emotion, or rather, does it just confuse that?
Probably there's something like that going on to explain, to leave what the feeling is for what's causing it. That's a distraction or a possibly some kind of grasping or a combination of all of the three poisons showing up in different ways to keep us from seeing the truth of what's right there. There's no way you can be lonely. There isn't anyone. But as long as you feel like there is someone, then there's that loneliness or that feeling of wanting company or wanting something or not wanting to be alone. Ego.
Nathan Bowing.
Yes, sir.
So are you saying that the best way of dealing with that kind of emotion is just to go straight into it without trying to put anything on
That would be a way of saying it. And it's difficult to do that intellectually or analytically or philosophically or some way like that and try to figure it out. Not so much that, but to just actually feel that. And one of the ways you can encourage that direct perception or direct feeling of what that is to practice a lot of sitting meditation. I'm very biased at it. Sit down, something I've been doing for a long time. Hold still and watch the movement of the mind so that you can see what is fundamentally true yourself, not just a belief, not just an opinion. You get to see it. You can walk out of this building and never come back. Don't even talk to me again. You don't even have to say thank you. Just see it. That's all the thanks I need. You see it? That's true devotion. Not just to some old man, but to the teaching of the Buddha's Dharma 2,500 years ago. Just that particular tradition, not to mention all the other traditions, the indigenous traditions of the Native Americans. Some of those show up in that way also, of not being separate from anything.
Nathan Bowing. So would you say that's engaging that emotion at maybe more of a direct energetic level rather than at the level of story of why it's happening?
I wouldn't use the word engage. Engage sounds like you're doing something with it, you're engaging it. Say, just receive it. When I say receive it, the emotion shows up. If it starts to fade, watch it fade. Awareness. If it starts to get stronger, starts to push on you, just observe. In other words, the other word is if it starts to come towards you, it gets a little bit frightening. When you're observing something, a little that's those shiny eyes in the dark are a little bit too startling. That's when you go from the word observe to receive it, swallow it, taste it, smell it, hear it, feel it. Receive it. That's the most profound form of generosity, is to give everything your attention. Yes, sir. Yes, Jisho.
Tishwang, one more question around the student-teacher interface, if I may
Yes.
say so.
Yes,
You give the example very often that if you're walking down the path and you see somebody whacking their dog with a stick, you take that stick away.
yes.
What if it's a student seeing the teacher hitting the dog? Bye.
Well, that student should come up and take this stick away from the teacher. You have to apologize first, but no, it's a very similar situation. I sometimes say, and I don't want to get into the personal statement, but I'm saying find something that I've done wrong here. Point it out. We have all kinds of people leaving the Dharma and going different directions based on other people's opinions and judgments. No one's talking to me about this. Interesting, isn't it? That people just stop supporting, stop attending as students, but no one's talking to me. No one sits down in front of me. Those people who do, they might still leave, but at least there's some kind of understanding between us rather than just some kind of a judgment and grasping at somebody else's. You might not be believing your own thoughts, but you're believing somebody else's thoughts or propaganda.
Mozuku bowing. She shows example of, you just said you might go take the stick away from the teacher.
Yes,
Would that be? Would that still be receiving it as a teaching?
it's an interesting area because I can speak of when I was back in the 70s, when my teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, was drinking a lot. And people were going over to Liquor Mart in Boulder and bringing back huge magnums of sake for him, and he would drink a whole bottle in an afternoon. I didn't do it myself because I wasn't that close to him, but I often thought, why did they even take that over to him? Why did they give him that stick to kill himself with? Why did they give him all that alcohol? That was a teaching for them. And what did they do? They helped him. They're not to blame. Not saying they killed the teacher necessarily. Just an interesting area to reflect on of the causes and effects and what causes this, what causes that. So, go ahead.
Mozuku bowing, what does it mean to receive something as a teaching if it might include taking a stick away from the teacher?
Same thing. That doesn't mean that you won't impute some kind of activity on the part of your own identity. Right?
Mozuku bowing, you emphasize just receive.
I do.
So when I hear receive something as a teaching, I think just receive, don't produce. Is taking the stick away not a production?
It is, not so much recently, but years ago, different people, Shoka, Sokuzan, students way back there, if I reached for a cookie in the kitchen, they'd take it away from me. And I would let them. They're protecting me from my sugar addiction, I guess you'd call it, being diabetic. But they would do that. So that happened quite a bit for how long? Maybe a couple of years. And then I just told them to stop it. I'll eat what I want. So, what does that mean? Is that a teaching, or I can't stress that out into that's some kind of a, I'm saying the same thing that the guardian was saying. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying I just function with people the way they show up as best I can. And if I have permission to teach and I see you've gotten some very direct, of all the people in this room, you've gotten some extremely direct teachings from me. And if anybody's in here has a right to call me a bully, you couldn't you? You think of me as a bully?
Mozuku bowing, it's the relationship that it is hard to. I think I still have some confusion that receiving something as a teaching means it's hard to distinguish. How is that distinguished from accepting something?
Don't accept anything, don't reject anything, don't ignore anything. So don't accept it. The way you receive it, receive anything is you won't know what it is. You know what it is, then we're right back to judging, evaluating, condemning, accepting. We're right back to relative truth, maybe a fairly high level of it, but that high level of relative truth will destroy whole nations. This is what happened with, if you study any history at all, which I don't study much, but if you look at the Second World War, just chaotic situation. If they'd have seen what their Führer was up to early enough, they could have stopped him right away instead of waiting until he went into Sudetenland. Instead of waiting until, what was it, Neville Chamberlain that let him get away with everything forever, and then finally he's rolling into Poland and rolling into the Netherlands. And I'm saying, what am I saying? See what I'm saying? You must see what I'm saying.
Mozuku bowing. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know if I do. I still have a question in this area, and
Go ahead.
You're talking about relative truth. It seems like if you take the stick away from anybody, that's functioning out of something relative. I mean, you can't ever know.
I'm not saying you shouldn't function out of something. The only thing I teach is awareness. I don't tell you how to act. I mean, sometimes you might act in a way that I don't care for, or that I want to object to. Of course, that's going to happen. But I want you to be aware. If you're really aware, there's no way I can offend you, no way I can bully you, no way I can have any say so about you at all. Because you're liberated, you have no authority anywhere. No one can tell you what to do. At all. Powerful, very, very powerful. Contemplate that for a while. People are only someone's only gonna be able to control you, if they can see the way in which you're operating out of hope and fear, success and failure, right and wrong. Go ahead. There are a lot of people that hold their hands up, they wanna help you. Wanna help you get out of it.
Well,
Go ahead,
Mazuka bowing, you're talking about control.
yes,
If we see what this is, if nothing's separate, how can anything really be controlling anything else?
we can. It's dependent, there aren't any separate things. But when people believe that they're separate from other people, then they're going to try to do everything on the simple level, give you advice on what to do. Based on their opinions about what they've been watching. Up to and including ordering you around. Like when I've told you to get the hell out of the Hojo. Which, as I recall, you didn't leave. I knew you wouldn't leave.
Mazuka bowing, what does it mean to receive something as a teaching?
Whatever the teacher is doing or saying, if you're this person's student, whatever they're doing, receive it without putting any condiments on it. Just receive it as a straight situation. Trungpa Rinpoche would say a straight drink. No vermouth. Of course, he drank a lot, so I don't use that, but just straight, you just receive it with no, you don't interpret it, you don't put anything on it, you just receive it. And if you really receive it, you will not know it goes, you could say it bypasses your intellect. It goes right into your consciousness. Just a way of talking about it, probably doesn't even do that. Yes,
Mazuka bowing, it seems like if you were to take a stick away from anybody who's beating anybody, there may not be a thought that something's right or wrong, you might just act. But there's some kind of at least preference or grasping that,
you could, it's just so much, I mean, you might not just come up and yank it away, you can say, can I see that stick? Or you might come up with a bigger stick and say, here, try this, magnetize, pacify, enrich, magnetize and destroy, you know how that's done? You look at the situation and you operate in a way to fundamentally help. So you might not be able to pacify, that person might be just into beating. But you might come up with a bigger stick and say, here, and as soon as they reach for it, they hand you the other one, and then you take both of them. Just a story. I'm saying if you're present and you're there and you're not operating out of hope and fear, and you're operating out of fundamentally helping others, you'll know exactly what to do. You won't need a plan, you won't need to listen to me, and you won't need to ask me any questions.
Mazuka bowing, what you're describing sounds like receiving the situation, actually really receiving it. What's the as a teaching part?
You reflect on that for a while. Everybody else here, it's obvious. You're the only one that doesn't see it. Sorry, I couldn't help that. I could not resist.
Sorry, you don't like my question.
That's a big assumption. If I didn't like your questions, I would have called on somebody else. I like your questions. You have good questions.
I was joking.
You're a really nice person also. Yes.
So about if we're feeling like we're being controlled, are we actually seeing how we're not separate?
There's a possibility that some of that could show up. I'd say it's a possibility that could show up, but it's not always going to be that way. You're not going to be able to find a standard that'll, if you do this, then that must be this. If that happens, then that must be because of this. You can't track it down. You cannot, you track it down a raccoon, it's going to turn into a muskrat. Sorry, it's a pretty weak example, but it's like that. You think you're on the track of something, it's not exactly that. Yes.
Dr. Bowing, how is taking the stick from the teacher different than telling everybody that the teacher's beating dogs? Bowing.
Well, that taking the stick for the teacher is a metaphor, as you know. It's not, doesn't mean you would necessarily take the stick away. So if you carry that metaphor into the metaphor of telling everyone that the teacher's beating dogs or something like that, I don't know. It's the images, the metaphor kind of comes apart there from the point of view of trying to point out something. The most important thing that I understand from that situation, don't interfere with anything, receive it totally so you can see what it is before you step into, including taking a stick away. I just use the teaching, it's out of context, because the way I taught that off and on for several years is I'm not saying that you should receive everything, but I'm not saying you shouldn't, if somebody's hurting someone, you shouldn't step in there. Just like if you see a child, someone else's child, none of your business, it's your child, run away from them between two cars and going out into traffic, you don't stop and say, is it okay if I save your child? You don't do that. You function out of that situation. So that's, that metaphor is a little bit more intense, but it's somewhat like the stick beating situation. The idea is to relate to that with awareness and see if what would happen there. You don't know what would happen. That dog might turn and bite you. And then that person will save you from the dog. I mean, there's just so many variables to that the metaphor can only go so far. What I am endeavoring to say is try to meet everything where it's at with awareness rather than preconceptions or judgments about what you should do or shouldn't do. Yes.
Dr. Bowing, to maybe strip the image away from it, and ask it again. Or at least say what I was seeing different there is, in the one situation, I'm actually seeing the teacher and I'm doing something about it, but the other situation where we're talking about it, it's so conceptual and full of projections. Bowing.
Complicated. You have a question?
And you're vowing, if, did you say if we receive, we won't know what it is?
If you can, in maybe not every situation, but in any teaching situation, if you really receive it, it may not be really clear on what it is. It may take a while.
So when you're vowing, so is that mean we may not, we don't necessarily understand what the teaching is?
Yes.
Is naming it a teaching, moving away from what it is?
Well, it could be doing anything with it. Best just don't do anything with it. The teacher's already there. You're already listening to the teacher, receiving. I've literally been giving hour plus talks or hour or less or whatever for years and years. Hundreds and hundreds of talks on YouTube. And I would say go back and listen to a few and see if I contradict myself. This is unusual for me to even read anything. It's just because some of the ideas in there, I wanted to make sure that I said them this evening. Most of them are off the top of my head. Yes.
Yeah, long bowing. Would it matter at all if you contradicted yourself?
Nope.
Thank you.
I do it all the time. Contradict. Yes, sir.
Yoka Bowing, question from YouTube. James in Pennsylvania asks, how do I learn to avert my attention to the subtle mind?
To the subtle mind?
Yes.
Well, I have a YouTube or TikTok or whatever that called Shikantaza. It's about 30 seconds long. It tells you, maybe longer than that, but tells you how to practice Shikantaza. There are other forms of meditation. I just feel like that's a very good practice. Sit down, watch the movement. Don't worry about the concepts of subtle mind or averting, and don't particularly be concerned about anything other than just observe your mind. Hold still, have all your senses open, including your eyes. Look at something that's not moving, like a wall or a closet door. Hold very still, sit symmetrical, and watch the movement of the mind, and do it from now on, an hour or two a day for the rest of your life, until the boundary between the awareness practice of meditation and the awareness practice of your everyday life, that boundary just collapses. And it's always the same. It doesn't matter whether you're sitting, walking, standing, lying down. It's always awareness. Doesn't matter if you're sleeping or if you're dreaming. Awareness, awareness, awareness. And it's not awareness about something.
Sokuzan, does receiving something as a teaching have a different quality or like a more curiosity or something than just receiving?
Well, it's going to have some variabilities in it. If your teacher is doing something that's crazy or outlandish or whatever, or disruptive or contradictory, then if it's your teacher, endeavor to receive it as a teaching. I mean, if you, or let's just receive it straight up. But if you're having challenges with it, then you could try to approach it as a teaching. Or try to receive it as a teaching. That doesn't mean you spend much time thinking about it. Yes.
So, I mean, would a way of saying like to receive something as a teaching would be to ask a question about it instead of think we know what the teacher's doing?
It'd be very good to ask if you have the teacher in front of you, which everyone here does. Anytime you need it, you should ask questions about it. If that's what you're saying, yeah, you should ask. There.
In long bowing, when you talk about things not needing to be fixed or see if you can find something wrong, if you think something's wrong, is that pointing at a lack of understanding or seeing dependent origination? Seems like those two concepts contradict each other.
So if one understands the concept, dependent origination, and understands or sees what that concept or that structure is pointing to, then right and wrong, or there is no right and wrong, because that understanding transcends all the polarities: time, past and future, space, here and there. Any kind of location is a part of the illusion. So that would be more about it.
In long bowing, it's hard to articulate, but it feels like the idea that something, like for example, earlier you said nothing needs to be fixed, but clearly we fix things all the time. So when you say nothing needs to be fixed, you're not talking about patching a hole.
No,
right? It seems that you're indicating
relative things. We're living an illusion that we believe in. So yes, things need to be patched and repaired and fixed. And
so it seems like to say that something is wrong and needs to be fixed, it's as if that shouldn't be happening, as if the dependent origination didn't mean for that to happen. Like that's not part of the dependent origination, and that just seems incoherent.
everything is dependent. You can point to it. It has sources that are untraceable. In other words, it doesn't really have a source. Or there's just this, and it happens immediately, as it is, immediate. Soku is the Japanese word. There's no past or future. Sure looks like it though, because I'm standing like this, and then a few minutes from now, I'm going to be doing this. So, and we record that in our visual consciousness and memory and so on. So we have a really strong recording of past and future. Yes.
In long bowing, you often say everything has, if it shows up, it has a right to be there, or you have it coming. Is that pointing at the same thing, that it's not wrong in that sense? It's not outside of.
Yes. It doesn't mean it won't be uncomfortable or painful or challenging or disappointing or all the other relative things. But that's when we're picking and choosing right and wrong. We want it, we don't want it, we like this, we don't like that. Instead of seeing everything is just completely, as the Dzogchen master said. But you have to see it. If you don't, you'll be attracted by the singularity of things and repulsed by other things, further creating the illusion of time and space and like and dislike, success and failure and so on. Yes, sir.
Well, last one, please. So is it fair to say that relatively speaking, you could say something wrong, but ultimately it's still not wrong?
Thank you. Yes. There's no way you can ever be wrong. You can relatively, yes, you can be wrong, but if you're teaching out of what this is, and someone asks you a question, there is no correct answer. There is no right answer. There's no standard of answering. There's just the response. And if there's a teacher-student relationship and it is a true student, one who is doing his or her or their best to receive the teaching and has an intention to see the truth no matter what, and you have a teacher whose whole life, his, her, or their life is completely dedicated to serving others, saving all beings. It might not look like it. They might look like they're all self-centered and they're just trying to manipulate people and get their money or abuse them or be mean to them or beat them up. There's no way you can figure this out. That's the only disguise the teacher has, is relative truth. If he doesn't have that, the whole thing collapses. You've got to have this, you have to have this, you have to have this. There has to be some kind of a structure in the illusion, otherwise you can't teach. Trungpa Rinpoche talked about his Dorje Kasanger Vajra guards. He said in order to function as a Dharma teacher, as a Vajra master, he needed a horizon. And his horizon were his guards or his attendants. They created a horizon whereby he could appear, and they did that. We don't need that here. Anything else? Very good. Any more? Is it online?
Yes.
Okay, I'll take it.
Milka bowing. It's actually just a comment from Jonathan in Kenosha bowing. I experience your ferocity as a bracing wind that startles me into deeper awareness. Thank you.
Yeah, breaking wind, I've heard that. That's kind of a compliment, I guess. You know,
Bracing.
oh, bracing wind, I thought you said breaking wind. You did say breaking wind. You did? No,
I don't know what I said for sure.
you're not gonna take responsibility.
I'm reading it now though.
Bracing wind. Well, good. Well, thank you for that comment. So not true with everyone. Shut up, Shoshi. Jishin.
So many jokes are running through my head right now.
Okay, well, we don't want to hear them.
Yeah, I know.
Jishin, go ahead. I'll take your question, then we'll close.
Ishin bowing, thank you. You said that always awareness, it is not awareness about something.
Yes,
What is it about?
it's just awareness. It's like you're a sky. It's like you're the sky. You're the sky. Your mind is like the sky. Mind like the sky. Birds come, ducks fly through, rainbows appear, clouds come and go. It's just stuff. It just doesn't matter what happens. But if you care what happens, the sky curls up into a ball of something or some cloud or something and wants to fight with other clouds, wants to keep the rainbows out or stop the rainstorm or the hailstorm, to use the weather images. You know, you have no preference. You don't care what happens. That doesn't mean that your intention isn't to save all beings, as this says in the vow. And sometimes people misunderstand what you're up to and they want to stop you. They want to discredit you. As we know, it's obvious. That doesn't make them wrong. They're suffering too. The only way they know how to get rid of their suffering is to blame someone. Thank you so much for your kindness and your consideration.
Hey, Mary. May the merit of
this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiho san shi shifu, shison musa moko sa, moko hoja horomi. The 10 directions, the 3 times, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita.
We'll take a 5-minute break to set up the Zendo for the evening service.